Hi, Tanya.
Hiya.
I'm just waiting for Kirsty, our interpreter, to be connected. It just says connecting to audio.
Okay, no problem.
Hi, Rachel. Hi, Jane.
Hi. Oh, there. Wasn't sure if you could see me or not. I've just put the right button now.
Oh, hi, Kirsty.
Hi.
So we've got Tanya and Rachel.
Hey, Laura's joining as well. Laura's joining.
Oh, actually, I can't see her on the.
I think they're just sending a link now, so.
Oh, okay. I'll
Yeah.
wait.
Should be there in a minute.
Is Rachel Young in the meeting?
Yeah.
Can't see her just yet.
Yeah. So Tanya, is Laura going to join in now, or she's
joining in a minute. I think just driving home first.
Oh, okay. Okay, we'll wait for a few minutes.
No, that's cool. Thank you.
We might make a start in about shall I say in about 3 minutes time?
Yeah, you can start.
Yeah.
To join anyway when she's ready.
Okay. Well, Rachel and Jane, I'm facilitating the group, but I normally just do the introduction. So Tanya, do you want to just introduce yourself, and then what we'll do is I'll let people in as they join us.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, hi, I'm Tanya Smith. I'm a carer of 6 children. I've got some with special needs, ADHD and autism. And yeah, I'm a single parent on my own, so it's, sometimes challenging. Best of times. Yeah.
Just to let everybody know, this session's been recorded, and what we'll do is we share the recordings on YouTube. It is edited before it's shared, so just to let you know that you're all happy it's being recorded.
Yeah.
Rachel, Jane?
Yep, that's fine.
All right. Brilliant. Oh, background noise, Tanya.
Sorry?
Background noise. I think it's, I'll just let Laura in.
Oh, background noise, right? I'll mute myself then, yeah?
Thanks. Hi, Laura. We'll just wait for Laura to connect and then. Hi, Laura.
Hi.
Hi, Laura. Could you give us a quick introduction? We've got Rachel and Jane from CPFT.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm Laura. So I'm Tommy's boy's mummy. He has golden heart syndrome. I really just wanted to join the meeting because he's struggling a little bit with his mental health recently. So yeah, I think this would help me a lot in sort of understanding.
So I've already just done the just let everybody know that it's a recorded session and it'll only be shared on YouTube. And that you're happy to go ahead, Laura?
Yeah, that's fine.
Brilliant. So I'll let Rachel and Jane introduce themselves, and then they can lead on the session. And then any questions, you can put your hand up, or you can put it on the chat box.
Yeah, that's fine.
And then Rachel, Rachel and Jane will answer the questions. I hope there is a feedback form. I'll share. Where am I? I will share the feedback form link in the chat box. If everybody can please, once the session is over, can you please complete the form and return it back to us? That'd be really helpful. Thank you. I'll hand over to Rachel and Jane. Mute myself.
Thank you.
If not, what we can do is if Tanya and Laura want to spend some time asking questions, that might also be helpful.
I think you had a presentation from Insight recently as well, didn't you? The counselling service.
I'm not sure. Laura, Tanya, do you know about it? Yeah, I don't think I facilitated that one. I think they do so many.
No, I don't think I know about that. Sorry.
They do so many per month. It's I only get allocated, or I get allocated, and I just So Rachel's still here, but I wonder if she's logged out and I don't think she's logged out.
Can you hear me?
Hi, can you hear me? I'm back. Great, I can see the presentation, but I can only see, just let me move that to there. That's great. Okay, so I can see the presentation. Are you speaking yet, Rachel, or are you still quiet?
Can you hear me? I'm speaking, but
Yeah, okay.
can you not hear me?
I can hear you, Rachel. Just I've come back
You
in,
can?
so I don't know if, yeah, I think we're all
Okay.
up and running. So hallelujah.
Apologies, everybody.
Do you want to start off, Rachel? I don't know if you've introduced yourself while I've been gone.
I've literally just come back in as well, so no.
Okay.
So I think sorry. So yeah, I'm Rachel Young. I'm the team manager for the Psychological Skills Service in Peterborough. I'm an occupational therapist by background, so I've been working for the team now for since September last year. So nice to meet everybody.
And what I
And Jane,
forgot
have
to
you
mention,
got control of the PowerPoint?
well, I'm Jane Wood. I'm one of the mental health liaison practitioners from Primary Care Mental Health Services. So it's my job to work with some GP surgeries to help them to send referrals into DPFT and to make referrals into our services as appropriate for the people that need it. Our services for over 17s and under 65s. So we're an adult service.
So in terms of the presentation, Jane, are you going to move the slides on, or
I don't know that I've got control of it.
oh, was it Louise?
Tanya's
Sorry,
got control of.
Tanya. Okay.
Brilliant.
So yeah, go to the aims, and then we'll just. Sorry, I just have to just say to move on to the next.
I've got the control. So if you just tell me, I'll move the slides on.
Cool. Yeah. So just
Thank
go
you,
to the next
Tanya.
page. Thanks. Okay, so the aims of us, I guess, kind of coming today just to kind of discuss really and give an understanding of what primary care mental health services are, and to also raise awareness of how to access them and what to expect, to explain what other services are available also within the primary care service, and to provide an overview of a couple of these services that we do offer. So we're going to look at kind of the service that I'm a manager for, the Psychological Skills Service. So we'll go into the interventions offered there, and then we'll discuss a little bit about the personality disorder community, similar, same as what Jane said, 17 to 65. So just to make you all aware of that as well. So I'll hand over to Jane.
Okay. So we are Primary Care Mental Health Services, and we are part of CPFT, which is Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Foundation Trust, which is the mental health trust that covers the whole of the Peterborough and Cambridgeshire area. And our role is to provide specialist mental health support for anyone between 17 and 65 within our area, and to support GPs in the treatment of mental health issues in primary care. So we hold regular what we call virtual clinics with the GPs, where the GPs can discuss any patients that they think need to be referred into mental health services, and we can offer advice or accept the referral and do the assessment. Next slide, please. So our aim in primary care mental health services is to improve access to prompt advice and support for people with mental health problems, to enable people to receive help in a familiar setting. So we are usually, well, we used to be always based in the GP surgeries, but after COVID, we couldn't get back into the GP surgeries. because of COVID, but we are back into most of the GP surgeries now and can see people face to face, and can also see people face to face at the town hall, which is our base as well. So there's plenty of opportunities to see people in a familiar setting. And our aim is to deliver a more joined up approach to care, because I think lots of people feel that mental health services are rather fragmented and it's difficult to access, and there's various points of access in different services, and it can seem quite confusing as to where people need to go to get the help that they need. So our service aims to help the GPs direct people through our services in a more logical way. So we'll go on to how that happens later, and you can give us your feedback about whether or not you think that is actually an easier way of managing or not. Our aim is to provide holistic care with appropriate evidence-based interventions. So we are not a counselling service, but we can refer people into counselling. We provide a range of therapies and interventions to people who need it, and we try to tailor make those interventions to be helpful to the person who needs the help. And our aim is also to ensure that the right treatment in the right place at the right time for the right person based on their needs. So all our assessments are needs-led rather than service-led. Next slide, please. So how do we do this? So again, it's a person-centred approach to physical and mental health needs, and also social care is part of that. I'm a social worker by profession, so I'm quite keen to make sure that the whole system that the person is involved in is looked at, because there'll be strengths and weaknesses in that system. And the service primarily delivers assessments of people's mental health. That's my bit of the service, the primary care and mental health service. We do the initial assessments. Those can be face-to-face. Sometimes we offer video calls if that's more convenient for the person, or telephone calls. Lots of people just want to be spoken to over the phone, and we can do a good assessment over the phone in very many instances. So what happens when people come through for that assessment? So various different outcomes will happen. So sometimes people just need signposting to various services or organisations. Some of our CPFT services can accept self-referrals. So for example, psychological wellbeing service will accept self-referrals, and if people are appropriate for that service, then we can signpost them to that service. And there's also Insight Healthcare Counselling, which is not an NHS service, but we can direct people to self-refer to Insight, and Peterborough Counselling Services as well will accept self-referrals. So sometimes people just need that advice and direction as to where to access the support that they need. We can offer advice and treatment. We can offer brief interventions to help people manage their mental health challenges, and we do the screening for ADHD and ASD. So that's for adults who have symptoms of either of those conditions, and we will do the initial screening to make sure that the person gets through to the place that can do the fuller assessment. So our interventions there are fairly brief, but we will offer somebody coming to those services an assessment of their mental health in case they need counselling or psychological wellbeing services as well. So often there's quite a long wait for ADHD and ASD assessments through class. So we try to make sure that people are supported in the meantime. So we can make those onward referrals to different CPFT organisations, or we can refer into some of the other associated mental health services like Insight. We can make referrals there if people don't want to self-refer. And obviously with the person's permission, sometimes people prefer us to do the referral rather than them going through the whole assessment again with a different service. And we don't offer diagnostic assessments, but we can we do have a psychiatrist working in our team who will offer a diagnostic assessment, but that is only for certain treatments. So people can't just choose to have a diagnostic assessment. We won't offer that. But if they need a diagnosis as part of some treatment that they're being offered through CPFT, then they would be streamed into seeing the psychiatrist for that assessment. Next slide. So how do we do this? So we support people and focus on goals to access local community resources. So it's important to us to know about Family Voice and other services in the community, because sometimes people don't know about that. And we want to work alongside the person being assessed and empower them to have the recovery journey. So we try to offer people the hope and the ability to see what good mental health will be like once they've made a good recovery. And our job is to help that person with their recovery along the way. So so again, if people self-refer to various organisations, we can offer advice about that and give them details of how to self-refer. Next slide. So what to expect from an assessment. So our assessments take approximately 30 minutes to an hour, depending on the complexity and what the person has to discuss. So we start off by asking an overview of the current difficulties. So we've got the GP referral, but sometimes we find that the GP's not gone into enough detail, or that the GP's probably, maybe misunderstood some of the difficulties. So we give people an opportunity to just confirm what it is that they need from us, get some background information as to if they've been in our services before and what kind of treatment they've had and what the outcomes have been, and talk to the person about what their goals and expectations are. So we try to prepare people very well in that assessment to help them to understand what they might need and what's available through our services.
Can I just ask a quick question? If
Yes,
basically the person with mental health issues isn't reluctant to admit that there's a problem, I mean, how do you?
We wouldn't be able to accept a referral in that case. We expect the GP to have a conversation with every patient that they refer to make sure the patient is willing to be spoken to about their mental health and seeking treatment. So on some of those occasions, we might discuss people in such circumstances with the GP in a virtual clinic and maybe give the GP some ways of encouraging the person to feel ready for their journey in recovery. But as you're quite right, sometimes people don't really fully accept that they've got anything that needs to be treated.
Yeah, sometimes they get to the point where they don't address the issue, and and then it gets to crisis point. It's only then that people think, oh, okay, this is bad, even though we've been having issues for a long time, and I've tried to sort of guide them the right way, shall I say. But it's very hard with somebody with mental health issues to think with them to make the right decisions and this kind of stuff.
It is, but we have to wait for the person to be ready, because they have to be ready if they're having therapy, because they've got to fully engage with the therapy. Mental health is one of those, well, it's the same with physical health as well. People can't really engage in the treatment unless they're willing to accept that they need it.
Yeah, but there also wasn't a time where somebody got referred for through a not occupational therapist, yes, in Addenbrooke's, and referred to the doctor to say that this person needs a mental health assessment. They'd been working with them and blah blah blah, and they basically just wrote back and said she copes well with day-to-day basis, blah 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 blah, so we can't accept the referral, which I found really quite shocking.
Well, think of it from that person's point of view. If they suddenly get approached by mental health services and they don't accept that they've got a problem, it's going to seem really strange, isn't it? So we have to wait for the person to be ready.
No, they'd been working with this person for months. They were quite happy for the referral to go through.
So the
They'd been-
patient themselves was happy for the referral.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, well, that could have been accepted then. I don't really know that particular case, but in those circumstances, as long as the patient is accepting that they want some treatment and support from us, then we're very happy to have any referral that GP sends in.
I guess, Laura, if you're worried about their safety, you'd call 111 option 2. And the only, I guess, the thing about mental health is that in order for therapy or counselling or any intervention to be successful, somebody needs to have insight and be committed to that journey. But if you're often, there's a lot of grey areas, and often it's really difficult because you really do need that person on board. But like I think Jane has said, that it's a case by case thing. And often what tends to happen is that you would have an MDT make that decision, so it's not always one person's decision, so it won't. Sorry, carry on. Where are you? Carry on.
Yeah, I find it quite confusing that it should be about prevention for it not to get worse, rather than waiting to the point where you have to ring 111 because it's then
so that's because we have different services in primary care and in CPFT. So primary care mental health services is only really set up to people who are willing to be assessed. There's Cameo, where people may have psychotic symptoms and people can self-refer to Cameo.
This person was willing. She was working with the
Well, I'm sorry, I don't know about that particular case.
Think,
and
Laura,
it was Cambridge, so it's not really my area.
The difficulty is that you have teams like the early intervention psychosis team. You've got the community mental health teams. You've got various different teams that are given a target or given a specific criteria to work within. I think the difficulty with individual cases is that because mental health assessments are clinical judgments, really, aren't they? And it's really difficult to comment on them. So if you're worried about that person's mental health, it's always 111 option 2, because you'd rather be safe, do you know what I mean, than be sorry.
No, I get that. But what I'm saying is it was from a professional to another professional.
But it would be their clinical judgments at the time that they assessed the person. That's a difficulty. So the clinical judgment would have been based on what they assessed and what they saw at the time. So it's difficult for Jane and Rachel to comment on it because they've only got very limited information. This service that Jane and Rachel provide, I believe it's a new one, isn't it? It's a fairly new service.
Yeah, we used to be called Prism.
The aim of this service is actually early identification. It is to get in there right at the beginning when people are coming into the GP, rather than, and so it's a really difficult one to tackle, Laura.
I just found, to be quite honest, I did find it quite disheartening that this wrote saying that she was off on maternity leave, and this, I would like her to have a mental health assessment due to blah blah blah, along with her much months, and it was basically, I didn't have any appointment referred back to the doctors. The doctor then referred it to the mental health team, and the mental health team then said she seems to be coping daily, blah blah blah.
There's always PALS, Laura. If you're not happy with the decision, you can always go to PALS and put your concern forward and ask for a reconsideration. You can always ask the team to say, look, can you reconsider your decision? But we're not happy with this. There's always that option.
And PALS will explain what happened, why and how, and then give you an opportunity to challenge that. So PALS is an excellent service. I would strongly recommend that.
I just find sometimes it's like there doesn't seem to be enough hours in the day to keep having to fight these things that really we shouldn't have to fight for.
Well, PALS is there for that reason, and they do take everything on and work with it really efficiently. So they are really good.
I'll try and get on to
take the load off you.
Yeah.
Okay, next slide. Okay, so we have a variety of different mental health professionals in our service, and initially people are seen by either myself as the primary as a mental health liaison practitioner. So I sort of head a team of some primary care mental health practitioners who I can allocate the assessments to, or sometimes if the assessment is a bit more complex, then I'll take that on for myself. But then I have to go down the waiting list of everybody and allocate everything out. So I don't tend to be able to do all of the assessments. So that's why I need my little team to take on some of the other assessments. And we have psychiatrists in our team, so they're the ones who will deliver the the sort of clinical decisions about medication, diagnosis, that kind of issue. And we also have, we're really lucky to have peer support workers. So peer support workers are people who've got lived experience of mental health issues, and they are people who've achieved a good level of wellness in order to manage to do a job. And so they can support people who may not be at that level of wellness, and they can share some of their experiences of recovery if that's appropriate with the person, or just encourage them to think of ways of linking in with the community and feeling more recovered in their mental health. So we're really glad to have those support workers in our team. And we also have recovery coaches. I don't know if you've all heard of the Recovery College. So the Recovery College is the CPFT organisation, and we offer various courses and sort of information sessions about mental health and sometimes some other subjects as well. And anybody can refer themselves into our Recovery College. Okay, next slide. So all requests to our service come from your GP. So I know it's sometimes a hurdle to actually get into the GP surgery, but now hopefully you're all more knowledgeable about what's actually out there. And so the GP needs to have that initial discussion with the patient first to tell them that there is our service and that they want to make a referral in. And the patient has to agree to that referral, so it's not suddenly a surprise that we're giving them a ring and contacting them. So we would ask the GP to provide all the contact details that are needed for us to make that initial call to the patient and then book them in for an assessment. So we would book them in for the assessment, usually at a time that's convenient for them. We work 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, so hopefully in that time there's a space in the person's diary to have that initial assessment with us, and then we work with the patient themselves to decide what it is that they want. So we can tell them what we have as options for treatment at that initial assessment, and then sometimes people say no thanks, that's not really what I'm after, and we can offer them some signposts and advice to other places that might be useful for them. But if they want to be referred into some of our services, then we're very happy to send them on for some further treatment. Yeah, we don't work bank holidays or weekends, so it is more of an office hours based service. Okay, next slide. So what other services are available? So I might, is your microphone working, Rachel? Do you want me to hand over to you?
Yeah, I'll just pull it up on my screen, just 1 second. So yeah, so the other services.
You are the manager of the psychological skills service.
Yeah, so some of the other services, this slide hasn't for some reason pulled up everything that should be on there, but I just kind of, on this slide there was just an overview of the different services available that kind of fit under the primary care kind of services and umbrellas. So they've got the psychological skills service, which I'll go into more detail about after this, and then there's the Is This For Me, which is part of the personality disorder community service, which we will discuss a little bit about as well. There's also the psychological wellbeing service. There's a really good website that's been created called the Hey Peterborough website, and the information about that is actually at the end of the slide as well. On there, it's basically a catalogue of all the services that are available in the local community. They do one for specifically for Peterborough, they do one for Cambridge, Fenlands, and they're constantly updating it, adding more information onto there about how to access different things, and just really just to show what's available. Which is, it's a really good resource that we use a lot as well when we're working with people. We've got the adult social care service as well, that support people. Well, it's social workers within that team that look at supporting people's social needs, social care needs, and any Care Act assessments can be looked at within that service as well. We've got the dual diagnosis outreach team. So that's a service that's to support people with substance misuse difficulties who are struggling and having that access and that support for them. And then we've got the advanced nurse practitioners who are also under the services, who are they nurse prescribers, so they kind of are able to help the psychiatrists with looking at kind of medication reviews and things like that. So they're a really great resource that we have as well. So what I'll do is I'll go into, if you move on to the next slide. Service.
Oh, sorry, you've missed off our pharmacist as well. So we have a pharmacist.
The pharmacist. Thank you, Jane. We also have an outdated pharmacist that's within the service as well, to look into any queries that we have about the medication also, and they've got their expertise that we can call upon. So we've got a real MDT within the service there. So yeah, the psychological skills service. So this is part of what's been called the Exemplar project. So it's one of the streams that sits under the Exemplar project. That's obviously part of Cambridge and Peterborough NHS Trust. Essentially, the goal of it was set up to deliver a new service that was more structured and a more seamless pathway within, well, basically within the mental health care, to eliminate the current gaps. So that was recognised that there was gaps in service, and this service was kind of set up to look at kind of trying to fill those gaps. So it was essentially looking at kind of psychological therapy and kind of how difficulties people were having to access the therapies. And so this was kind of there to look at, well, people being able to access talking therapies, from a referral, like from Jane, from the primary care mental health service. Once they've done their initial assessment, if they feel someone's suitable for one of our interventions, they can send us a referral. So it's just kind of bridging that gap between primary and secondary care, because obviously it is difficult, you know, for people to be able to access secondary care with the high demands currently within mental health services. And this is just, again, that early recognition of difficulties and trying to capture people that are struggling, and it's to prevent them from kind of having to get into crisis if possible, and kind of equipping people with skills to manage their mental health more effectively. It provides short-term interventions, and these are they're a mixture of group interventions and brief psychological interventions, which are individual. And it's, like I said, the aim is to kind of support people and teach people to learn skills to have a better quality of life.
Can I just say that we've got the psychological wellbeing service that offer CBT and insight, but sometimes people's needs are more complex than those services can manage. And those are the kind of patients that we welcome into primary care mental health services, but they have to be psychologically minded in order to have the therapeutic interventions from the psychological skills service. So the psychological skills service is, you know, very skilled in delivering psychological treatment through their psychologists. So it's to kind of bridge a bit of a gap that used to happen if somebody wasn't quite suitable for PWS and counselling, but weren't quite unwell enough to need the locality team. So it's for that group of people who have some complexity about their mental health and need this specialist intervention.
Yeah, and again with the interventions, it's all around kind of that readiness to change and kind of motivation to want to make changes. So it's the person needs to want to be able to access talking therapy and address the difficulties and have goals to work towards. So it's very much focused on it being the right time for that individual to engage in therapy, because sometimes there may be too much stuff going on that it means that they're not going to get the most out of the intervention. So it's about the right time, the right place for that person. So it's very clear that, you know, that the service is there and they can access it, but it needs to be an appropriate time for them to be able to get the most from it, and like take on the learning. So if you just move on to the next.
Can you
Oh,
just
sorry.
explain what PWS is, please? PWS, I don't understand that bit.
PWS is a psychological wellbeing service. Sometimes it used to be called IAPT.
Okay.
Some of the GPs still call it that, but it's a CPFT service, and it primarily delivers CBT for people who have got fairly straightforward mental health issues. So if somebody, for instance, has become overly anxious about driving, they can have a course of CBT that will help to reduce that anxiety. And it's usually sort of 6 to 10 sessions. And in those sessions, people will understand more about where their anxiety arises, and think of ways with therapists as to how to reduce those and understand it more. So that's and psychological wellbeing services do offer EMDR therapy, which is I don't know if everybody knows about that, but it's like this new therapy for dealing with trauma, and it's quite a specialist area. I think psychological skills services are also delivering EMDR as well, but it's something that's suitable for a small group of patients who have experienced trauma and can't move forward their lives because they're held back with the symptoms.
How do they give out this EMDR? What is it? What are they doing? What sort of therapy is it? Is it?
It was described on the telly a little while ago. It's quite interesting. So I've never seen it done, but it's where the person, it's CBT based. So the person's got to be, you know, actively involved in that therapeutic intervention. But the therapist kind of reprograms the person's mind, if you like, by getting them to talk about the trauma. And then the therapist says, or they do some sort of like clicking and things, and it seems to just make things settle in the person's mind. It's a very, very strange therapy. I suggest you have a look for EMDR on the web and see what you find. It's very, very interesting. Not everybody who's had trauma needs EMDR. It's just another example of what the psychological wellbeing service can provide. But generally, psychological wellbeing services don't. They have exclusions of not being able to treat people who've got symptoms of personality disorder, because people with that condition tend to need longer interventions than the short-term intervention that psychological wellbeing services can provide. People can actually self-refer to psychological wellbeing services, and sometimes if people aren't suitable for that service, then the GP can be advised to make a referral to us, and then we can see what we've got that might suit the person better.
Mm-hmm.
With that EMDR, is that for 18s only?
Yes, I think it is.
Okay. And do they do any intervention like that for younger people?
I don't know. I don't work in CAMS, so I don't know if there's anything available there.
Years ago, I had this sort of EMDR, I think, with a therapist. She told me to pull down on a piece of paper and then burn it and things like this, and I was just thinking,
that's
really
not quite the same. I don't think. I think that there's definitely a physical bit of EMDR where the therapist will do sort of like, I'm doing this, because they do sort of clicking and waving or something as the person's
cleansing or something like this. It sounds like.
That sounds like it's more of a CBT.
What is the proper name for the EMDR?
I wasn't expecting to.
Sure. I'm just wondering, because sometimes I get like,
I'm just trying to think of it as well.
Well, I don't know. Do you know, Rachel?
I can Google it.
Movement.
It's to do with the eye movement. So it's
it's eye movement desensitization reprogramming. It's a bit of a mouthful.
So the clicking is to make the person's eyes go from side to side, and that it's to do with trauma. And sometimes when people have experienced trauma, they have that fight or flight kind of feeling.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I've seen eye movement detentation and
Yeah, and it
yeah,
just
I can
seems
see
to
it.
put things back into, I mean, I always think of a person's mind as being like a filing cabinet, and when people sleep, it tends to put everything into order, and then you know, you're not bothered by your traumas anymore. So I think EMDR is a bit of a fast track to get you to have proper sleep.
Yeah, I think CBT.
I don't deliver it, so that's just my understanding.
I think stick with CBT.
Yeah, everything's based on CBT, and cognitive behavioural therapy is just about changing the person's thoughts in order to settle anxiety.
I think sometimes though, if that doesn't work, it's, you know, it's always good to have another option, because obviously what works for one doesn't always work for the other.
Yeah, and in CPFT, we're happy for people to be referred in several times. It's kind of our job to make sure the person gets what they need at that time.
Yeah. And we look at it in like a stage type process. So with trauma work, we look at the stabilization work first, which is one of the groups that we offer. And then after that, it would be then looking at the processing part. So looking at that, where EMDR would like kind of fit into. So it's looking at developing the skills of stabilization, and it could be quite triggering. So it's making sure that someone's equipped with the skills to manage if they're triggered. So it's kind of like this stepped care process.
Sometimes obviously with trauma it can be ongoing, you know, something that you can't remove yourself from, in other words. So yeah, it's thinking to know that to obviously change the thought process on. Yeah,
so then the trauma just becomes a lot of stress, doesn't it, if you can't remove yourself from the situation. So the coping skills groups that Rachel's service and PSS deliver are there to help people to manage the kind of flashbacks or the the depersonalization or dissociation that people experience when they're being triggered by the trauma.
Just a quick question to Family Voice. Do they run like I know this is an adult, which I wanted to come on as well, but do they run a children's mental health sort of group to find out information as well?
So Laura, we would probably try getting hold of either Chums or There's United, and the CAMS team. I guess it's a case of bringing people together, isn't it, and agreeing a time and date. If you find it, complete the feedback form, and in the feedback form, let us know what you want, and then I guess.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, I wanted to know about adult as well, but obviously the adult mental health team do, it's slightly different to children, don't they? So obviously,
yeah, I think this was more about, because we did that research where we found parental or parent care and mental health was a big thing. I guess this would be helpful for, say, if you met other parents that you were worried about their mental health. This would be good to have as a bit of a signposting.
I think sometimes I'm worried about my own mental health.
Well, that's it, isn't it? We did that, didn't we? Where we said every session we do, parents end up talking about their children or thinking about their kids. And we've always said that actually your mental health is just as important, because when we do the research, what we find is that actual parent care, stress and burnout is a big issue. And
I
so
think
I
a lot
guess
of mental health to do their best, don't you? But it is, it is very, sometimes you find yourself under a lot of strain, and just
I
sort
think
of
a lot of mental health anyway starts from childhood, I believe. I think if you're going to get mental health issues, it starts young, when you're younger. And then
we do see a lot of people who had childhood trauma.
But we all have mental health, don't we, Tanya? And it's a bit like physical health. And if you're not eating well or drinking well, you're going to get unwell, aren't you? Or if you're not sleeping well, you're going to get unwell. And this is the principle, isn't it? But I guess because CPFT, I guess it's like with any other organisation, things change all the time, don't they? And because of COVID and GPs being closed and all sorts of things, this sort of information is really helpful, because at least you can now say, right, okay, you can go to your GP, you can get this and this, and actually talk to your peers about it as well. So other mums that you meet, you finding stressed out, that they're feeling a bit stressed out, you can at least say, look, just go to your GP.
I think sometimes it's understanding it as an adult as well, because to be honest, we all sort of, when you're a child, you probably don't realise, as you're probably a young adult, that you're struggling with these certain things. And it is having an understanding of what's healthy for you, what's not healthy for you, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
You've
and
got
we
to have
can
a
help
certain
people
level
with
of
that
trust.
because the purpose of our assessment is to help the person understand how they've got the symptoms of mental health difficulties that they have and where that might have come from. So then following that assessment, we can put the person into the right therapeutic intervention or direct them to the right support. But it's that phrase, isn't it? You've got to put your own life jacket on before you help other people. And as a parent, that's what you have to do. It's important to maintain your own mental
You've got
health.
boundaries, definitely.
Yeah, it's really hard. It's really, really hard.
Okay,
I think
sorry.
I went for some therapy at that Peterborough counselling one time, and I think I was a teenager at the time, and I'll never forget it because when I come out, I lost my car keys, and I like went into panic mode, like nearly having a panic attack, freaking out. I was thinking, what am I doing coming here? I'm trying to make myself better, and now I feel like, you know, I'm just like, oh.
Yeah, but anxiety is part of everyday life, isn't it? And
yeah, I know.
You know, we all have
Exactly.
anxiety. It's
But I'll tell you,
kind of a normal thing.
Yeah, I had that psychological wellbeing service recently for treatment, and they were really good. I found them really helpful, to be fair.
Oh, good. I'm glad that was helpful.
Yeah, Jane, so the Recovery College, can anybody attend or do you need to have a referral?
It's accessible to anybody. There will be information on the, I'm sure it's on the
I'll add it, yeah. I've got, it's not the end of the PowerPoint, but I can always put it in the chat as well. Right.
I think our aim in primary care mental health is just to raise awareness that, you know, people with mental health problems are all around us, and, you know, including ourselves. You know, we all struggle with anxiety, depression, low mood for various reasons of stress. I mean, obviously in CPFT we treat people who've got major mental illnesses like schizophrenia and bipolar, but our service is really there to catch people who've got you know, anxiety, low mood, depression, before it gets any worse and needs to be, you know, seen in secondary services, because GPs are actually quite good at managing primary care mental health with medication and signposting people to the right services too. Is that the end of our presentation, or have we got a bit more?
There was a bit more to go, but
Okay.
yeah, sorry. Are you all right to bring it back up again?
Have you got control of it, Tanya? I haven't got it.
I haven't.
Oh yeah. Oh. Would it be that one on the left? The yellow button at the top. Technology is really good if it works, isn't it?
It works. I know. I'm so used to Teams. I wasn't sure how to share screens on here.
Okay, so we've.
Let's see.
There's a share button at the bottom, isn't there?
Ah, there we go.
Have you got control of that, Rachel?
No.
Do you remember where you were? What page you were on?
Back, yeah, no, back. Who is part of the team? So, oh gosh.
Yeah, who's
yeah,
part,
who's part of the team? That's the one. Yeah, although it's not for some reason coming up with anything on the slide. There is something on the slide. I'm not sure why.
This is what you sent to Louise, I believe. She's just sent it over to me so that I can share it.
Yeah, for that, for some reason it
had loads of little pop-up things, didn't it, when you were showing it to me, Rachel?
Anyway, I'll send round the funny, like I say, the finished version. It's not including it, so it's probably not even helpful to have it up for this bit, but it's fine. We'll work through it. So yeah, the rest of it's there. I don't know why the other bit isn't. So who is part of the team? So I'm just discussing that we've got psychologists within the team. So we've got the psychologists that do formulations and assessments. We've got our clinical associates of psychology trainees. This is a new role that's recently been introduced to help to, I guess, have more access and different options to engage, to get into psychology, because it's quite well, it's difficult to get onto a doctorate, and this is offering another kind of route for people who have an interest in psychology, and they can complete a master's and then they become clinical associates of psychology. So we have 6 CAPs who again do assessments and deliver the individual and the group interventions. And then we also have therapeutic support workers who deliver some of the brief psychological interventions, but also kind of provide some practical support and helping people with being able to have the skills to be able to manage and engage in an intervention. So that sometimes can be helping with paperwork. It can be helping with kind of connecting with the local community. Also, they work alongside the BPIs and groups. So someone that has perhaps got more additional needs, it's to help them with like practicing the homework tasks that are set, to kind of revisit some of the information and the material that's delivered, to help people to understand it a bit better. So that's kind of like the structure of the team that we have. Not everybody would need a support worker, but it's there for those that perhaps need a bit of additional support whilst engaging in our interventions. And then just a little bit about kind of what interventions we offer. So I think I've said briefly, we have psychologically informed support work, we have brief psychological interventions and the group programs. So I'll just go into a little bit more. I've kind of touched on this already, but the support workers, like I say, can support with the homework. They can help to kind of establish that safety part of stabilisation work and help people to kind of initially have some new skills to help to manage. It's very flexible. So what we do is, and I'll go into a bit more detail about it, we do, the psychologists and CAPs do formulation with somebody, which is a bit like an assessment, but going into a little bit more detail and understanding someone's background, kind of what the current difficulties are, some of the things that are maintaining those difficulties as well, and then thinking about kind of what goals they might have and how to kind of move forward and kind of address some of those difficulties that have been highlighted. So it's all very individualized and based on that person's specific needs. And then the main goal really is to have some goals really that they want to change, and that they set goals within the beginning of the session to think about what would they like to change, and then that support is there to help them to work towards that goal. It means that those who have perhaps got learning disabilities or are slower at learning, then other people might need a bit more repetition, so it offers that repetition, and we can provide like easier read material so that people can understand that a little bit better, and kind of just making sure it just is at a level that people are able to engage effectively with. And it's just really to help people to access that social support that perhaps is kind of being a stress for them, being able to kind of move forward and kind of progress with their mental health. So it's like looking at kind of reducing some of those stresses that are going on for them. It may be that they're isolated, and that's a big part within mental health. Somebody perhaps doesn't have connections with others or within the local community, so it's helping people to gain those connections and have the opportunity to kind of build their confidence in going out and about, and kind of being able to do that more frequently and creating that structure and routine. So there's a lot of work that the support work can offer that really helps people to kind of move, help and improve their mental health. We've then got the brief psychological interventions. So these are 8. They run over 8 sessions, and we have 4 different BPIs. One of them is managing low mood. This is focusing on helping people to reduce the vicious cycle of depression and increasing activity levels. So within that, again, it's that each session starts with like goal setting. It'll then go into further detail about kind of that kind of CBT cycle and what kind of prevents people from moving forward, and looking at solutions and problem solving around how to do things differently, and looking at activity levels. So they'll do activity diaries and thinking about how to work towards increasing the activity within their daily lives to help to pick up their mood. So it's a very each session covers a different topic, and I've got the leaflets which I'm happy to forward on as well to Naz at the end, so that there's more detail on those. I just thought with time I just do a quick overview of what the interventions are that we have. So we have graded exposure, which is helping people who are unable to leave their homes due to high levels of anxiety. It helps people to overcome and manage anxiety and try to get to places they have previously been avoiding. And again, sometimes we found with the graded exposure, that's where the support work fits in quite nicely, because they do the brief psychological intervention, which is kind of like the strategies, and then the support workers can come in and support people to actually put that into practice outside of the sessions and help them to grade kind of their exposure out to the areas that they're struggling to kind of expose themselves to and experiencing high level of anxiety. We've then got a specific anxiety management BPI, and this is helping people to learn strategies to cope with anxiety that, again, that interferes with daily life. And again, it's equipping people with skills, helping to understand that cycle of anxiety as well. So understanding that CBT cycle and thinking about how to overcome that. So again, it's about teaching skills and strategies to better manage anxiety and lead to a more fulfilling life. And then we've got the coping with hearing voices, BPI. And that's again to help people to learn how to make experiences of voices feel less distressing and interfering. So it's kind of understanding that the voices, you know, may always be there. They're not necessarily they're not going to take away the voice. It's about learning how to manage them more effectively and making sure, and like kind of understanding how they cause less distress. So again, it's equipping people with those skills and I guess understanding of what voices are and how to manage them more effectively. We then run a group program as well, which is the next slide. And that group program, we have 5 different groups that we offer. They vary in terms of the length of the groups. They're from 10 weeks up to, I say 15 weeks. Our schema group is slightly longer, but predominantly that's the only one that runs longer. Within the sessions, people are offered a pre-group, a mid-group and a post-group individual session. So again, that pre-group is to kind of explore what people's goals are, any kind of thing that the facilitators need to be aware of if they're struggling, kind of what signs would that be and how to support them within the group if they were having difficulties within the group context. Again, at the midpoint, that's a review of how the goals are going, a reflection on kind of how they're finding, you know, being a part of a group and kind of the learning of the content and any kind of feedback as well there. And then finally, the final posting group would be to look at, again, how people feel they've met their goals, reflections on kind of the skills that they've learned, and also thinking about what the next steps are. So thinking about potentially signposting to different services and thinking about what the next steps are following the end of the intervention. So the groups that we offer, our most popular group that we have a lot of referrals in for is quite a high demand group, is the complex trauma stabilization group. So a brief overview of this is it supports people to develop a better understanding of complex trauma, helps people to learn ways to cope in order to build a better future. So again, within this, this is a 12-week session, and it goes into detail about kind of understanding flashbacks and all the different symptoms associated with complex trauma. It then thinks about a lot of kind of how to use strategies like grounding strategies, mindfulness strategies to help to regulate and kind of feel more in control of some of the symptoms they're experiencing. So it's really a great group again for people to connect and kind of relate to others within, like the other people are also experiencing similar symptoms. It's not a group where people talk about their trauma. It's a group about kind of learning the skills and understanding complex trauma better, and kind of thinking about what skills can help to manage some of these difficulties that they're currently kind of getting in the way of doing what they need to do. So it's very much an educational group to equip people with the skills to help to manage these symptoms better. We've also got a Building on Me with ASD group. So again, this is helping people with autism spectrum disorder to learn skills. They don't need to have had a diagnosis of autism. Sometimes we've had people that come through that have been referred onto the class clinic, which is the clinic that kind of people, I think Jane often does referrals and.
Yeah, we'll screen people with the AQ10. Rachel, your sound's gone off, so that's I don't know.
Screenings to kind of be
back.
assessed for autism. Oh, is it back?
It's back. Yeah, sorry, it just went off briefly.
Okay, cool. So again, with this group, it's looking at, again, understanding ASD, a little bit better, getting so the key kind of topics that are covered within this group are kind of communication and getting on better with others, and then coping with emotions to be able to then build a meaningful life. So it's looking at those skills and kind of some of the difficulties associated with ASD and how to kind of manage those things more effectively, and kind of again all around focusing on goals and what people would like to achieve. We've then got the compassion focused therapy group. So this is learning to be more compassionate and find ways of tackling the critical voice that gets in the way of people building a meaningful life. We've got the taking action group. So this is based on acceptance and commitment therapy. And this is a group for people who are experiencing persistent physical symptoms. So again, this group is looking at helping people with things like chronic discomfort, pain, seizures, fatigue, and it helps people to build a more meaningful life and really learn how to manage and handle painful thoughts and feelings a bit more effectively, so that they have a less of an impact on their everyday life. And then finally, we've got the schema therapy group, which is the group that actually runs over 6 months rather than the rest of them running between 10 to 15. It's a longer running group, and it's a kind of a combination of group interventions and individual sessions throughout. And it's helping people to identify and build awareness and really manage their schemas, which is kind of like self-defeating core patterns of thought and behavior that people have. And it's looking at different modes and basically reducing the impact, and to learn different ways of getting their getting their needs met. It's the one that I know least about, so if people have questions about that schema therapy one, I'd have to just signpost you to places. It's the one that I'm least familiar with. It's one of the groups the psychologists do kind of lead facilitate the groups, and I think what's the great thing about our service is we offer a range of different therapies. It's not just, obviously it's a lot of it's driven by CBT, but the group side of things we offer, like the ACT, the CFT, the schema, and then it just has a range of different therapies that we provide. So essentially what happens, so that's kind of like an overview of kind of what the interventions are. So once the referrals come in, for example, from like James sent a referral to us, we'd receive a referral, and then what we would do is we would invite somebody to come for a formulation, or we refer to it as a formulation. So again, it's just building on that initial assessment that Jane will have completed, and just looking at it in a more detailed kind of way from a psychological perspective. The psychologists and the CAPs would go into a little bit more detail to try and kind of formulate the what's happened in the past that's led to somebody having the current difficulties that they're experiencing, and then just kind of them being able to kind of just make sure that the referral that we've got sent is the right therapy for them, because sometimes things come up in a more detailed assessment that actually prompts us to think, well, actually, would this other group be more suitable first? And then so we look at timings. So it's really important to make sure we're offering the right therapy at the right time and in the right order. So that offers us a bit of an opportunity to make sure that the therapy that they're accessing is in the right order and at the right time. And then that's a conversation and we'll have with you.
I was just going to say, the patient themselves doesn't have to know what therapy they need.
No.
So it sort of evolves from the discussion with the GP, then the assessment with us, and we'll formulate a bit more of what the problems are, and then talk generally about how to, what the person can do to change that, and then refer back in. So this is kind of fairly like a few sort of filtering services to make sure we get people to the right place.
Yeah. And that's similar to the assessments. Our assessments last up to an hour. We then we'd write a letter that we'd send out to the individual that's had the assessment, just to kind of give a brief overview, and then a plan as to where the next steps are, what interventions can be best suited for their needs currently. I've lost my spot. And those we offer them, we can offer them face-to-face, or we do them via Teams, or we do them over the telephone, depending on what people's preferences are as well. And a lot of our correspondence we do via email. So we always ask for an email address for somebody to then be able to, so we can access them, just so we can send out the appropriate links and things like that. But we do try and cater for people's needs if they've not got access technology, because we are aware that, you know, not everyone does have that access to that. So we are, you know, trying to think creatively about, you know, making sure that we offer obviously people face-to-face interventions. But unfortunately, the groups currently are only online. So the BPIs that we offer in the support work, it can be face-to-face, but currently the groups well, it was all set up during COVID, was our service, and it was obviously, we weren't able to offer any of the groups than online, but currently that's all we're able to offer at this point in time. So that's why the email addresses are kind of really important, to be able to kind of enable to like invite people to them. And then the support work, like I say, yeah, it's face-to-face as well. So that's a whistle-stop tour of psychological skills service. I realise I've spoken probably a little too fast, so apologies. But I do have leaflets and things as well, so I'm more than happy to forward them on. But that's essentially the overview of the psychological skills service. And then the next bit we were going to look at was just, it's not an area that me and Jane work in, but we often obviously refer on to this service as well. So we thought we'd give an overview of the personality disorder community service, so PDCS. So I don't know did you want me to continue that, Jane, or did you want to?
Yeah, could we have the slides? Have we got some slides on that one?
Yeah, just need to move the slides a bit further down.
Great.
This is it.
Okay, thank you. So sometimes people are struggling with, you know, relationships, intense and strong emotions, maybe difficulties in relationships. You know, perhaps they're finding it difficult to sustain relationships or make relationships because of how they feel about themselves and the world. So often people with those sorts of difficulties are suitable for our personality disorder service. People don't have to have a diagnosis of personality disorder in order to be referred into the support and treatment pathway. But what you know, people do have to acknowledge that they're struggling with the strong and intense emotions, and that relationships are difficult for them. So if they agree that that's what their problems are, then we can refer people into our personality disorder service that works in primary care mental health service, and they are offering. They've got 2 tiers of intervention now. It used to be that everybody was offered the Is This For Me workshop, and then that goes on to Making Connections, where people will have some dialectical behavioural therapy, which is a tiny bit different to CBT. It's more relationship based and helps people to understand their emotions and how other people may be perceiving situations, because often people with personality disorder symptoms find it difficult to understand how other people perceive them. They may have poor self-esteem, they may sort of overthink things quite a lot. So lots of those problems can be addressed in our personality disorder community service. And we work very closely with Mind, and Mind sort of co-facilitate quite a lot of our interventions. So sometimes after our assessment, we might be discussing with the person that we think that that's probably the best place for them to have the treatment and support that they might need. And again, people have to agree that that's what they will benefit from. So then we can refer them into the Is This For Me, and it's just 2 sessions where PDCS can talk a little bit more about what they can offer. And at that point, if the person doesn't think it's for them, that's absolutely fine. But if they want to go through to the Making Connections services, then they're very welcome to do so. And all of those services are delivered online at the moment. So they're regular sessions through Teams or Zoom each week. So they're at set time. So people should be able to manage to join all of those sessions at that specified time. If they're not able to go into all of the sessions, then they will end up being discharged. So it's a commitment from the patient to have the contact with all the sessions. Could you just raise that one up a little bit, the next slide, please? So I think I mentioned initially that so people with personality disorders tend to have had lots of complexity in childhood, so difficulties with caregivers perhaps not being very boundary, perhaps not being very consistent in their care. And it can lead the child to feel that the world is a scary place and a chaotic place, and then certain behaviours erupt that kind of reinforce that. And so what we aim to do in our services is to look at how that has happened and to give people better coping mechanisms. It's almost like validating what they've been through, but then giving them an opportunity to change that thinking and to manage in different ways in the future. So lots of symptoms of personality disorder can be very disabling for people and can really interfere with relationships and stop people being able to hold down jobs, because they can feel overly anxious about lots of things, lots of overthinking, catastrophizing situations very quickly. And what we aim to do in PDCS is to help people to understand that and have better ways of managing in the future. So the Is This For Me workshop is 2 sessions, so people have got to be able to tolerate being in a group. It's not about telling everybody all of your problems, it's about telling people that you experience those intense emotions, and then the therapist will give people different ways of managing it. And we have it in a group because often people can share a little bit of their experiences about what they've done to recover, or what went wrong for them, and then other people might be able to give them some support. So this is why it's in a group session. It's not about telling people too many personal details, it's about just encouraging people to get hope for recovery. So just put it up.
Do you want me to do the next slide? Because again,
yes, please.
For some reason it's not come up, but
okay.
I've got it here. So basically the next slide was about who is the workshop aimed at. So it's aimed at people who might have mood states that change quite quickly, people that tend to act quickly without considering the consequences. It can be for people who feel quite empty or feel they need others to fill them and make them whole. Or it might be for people to do things that might be harmful to themselves or others as well. Again, like what Jane mentioned, it's about some relationships and people aimed at people who have struggled to maintain healthy relationships and perhaps have unstable relationships with friends and family. And often can see just the good or the bad. It's all bad, it's all good, not necessarily kind of able to see that kind of middle ground.
Your sound's gone again, Rachel.
And then, yes, regulating emotions, becoming excessively angry. Yeah, it does this and then it comes back. Yeah, yours was doing it. Yeah, I don't know why it's doing it. Yeah, so getting excessively angry or react in a way that they later regret. And another kind of factor that can be for people who are kind of accessing the workshop is they're perhaps feeling scared of rejection or feeling scared of abandonment, and often worry about being alone or people leaving them. So they're kind of some of the the challenges that people perhaps experiences, and that's what the workshops are kind of aimed at. And then I think on the next slide, that one has come up. That's then once they've done that 2 sessions that Jane was talking about, then they opt into the next group program. This group program is a 15-week psychoeducation workshop, which, like I say, follows on from Is This For Me, and it's called Making Connections. And it essentially teaches skills to manage emotions and to build better relationships and to cope in times of distress. It's kind of split into 3 blocks, and there's like mindfulness incorporated in all of these blocks, and the blocks are 5 weeks, and then they go into much more detail about what Jane also mentioned was the dialectal behavioural therapy. So it goes into all the detail about those skills over that 15-week period. So the Is This For Me is just an overview and just seeing if a group is suitable, if someone does feel that thing, if a group is for them, this one is for those that like, yep, a group is something that's going to really benefit me. And this is where they get into the kind of all of that detail and kind of specifics about what strategies are helpful. And like Jane said, all the groups are currently, they're all online. And then I think the next one is about why group-based treatment. So I guess the benefits of group-based workshops is that they allow people to get together and have meaningful discussions and kind of share experiences. It's also about learning skills and gives the opportunity for more longer term change in areas of their lives, and helps people to build that resilience, such as having like a healthy support network. And so also one of the other benefits of group-based treatments is that obviously medication can alleviate some symptoms of mental ill health, but it's not always the long-term solution. A lot of the NICE guidelines, it says, you know, medication alongside kind of talking therapies is like the gold standard, and that, you know, the interventions that are offered by PDCS are in line with all the NICE guidelines and evidence base. And then finally, it builds skills in areas such as regulating emotions, being able to cope in stressful situations, improving support network, and also helps people to achieve goals, which is really a key part of that as well. So that's kind of, again, a whistle-stop tour of the PDCS service and kind of what that offers. And then we've just really got a bit of a summary just to kind of to finish up kind of and bring together everything that we've discussed. So basically, key points are referrals to primary care mental health services are made by GPs. So if anyone needs to access the primary care mental health service, it's try and get to your GP, and then they'll be able to make a referral. And then the assessments that are offered provide that opportunity to discuss past and current difficulties and formulate a person-centered plan. And then also offers that signposting and onward referrals should they be necessary. All the primary care mental health service offer evidence-based interventions, and this is essentially, it can be the first stop on the person's road to recovery, and like what we need to do is to make sure that it's as smooth a journey as possible, and hope that people have a positive experience from kind of their being in the services, and hope that they try and be as well connected as possible. And then just got any other questions?
Where do they run this personality group from?
You have to come through us, so it's all online, but you have to come through our service too. So you need a GP referral to come into our service, and then we can discuss what you might need from there. But we're actually having people who've been through that service telling their friends, and then them asking for a referral from the GP. So we know that it's got good results, and they are putting on lots more of the groups so they can get more people through it.
And is it run during school time, or is it run, do you know, when it's
during
run?
the week? Yeah, during the week. So I'm not sure exactly what time, but 2 o'clock sounds like it's a reasonable time, which may or may not fit. Yeah.
All the services are 9 till 5, so obviously it's
it just depends on whether it's in school hours or not, because you'll have to be in school hours.
Sure. We appreciate that. It's usually just an hour a week. I don't know if there's any facility for someone to look after the kids for that hour if it clashes with school time.
Just leave them with the school. I'm sure they will not have a problem. Thank you anyway.
Okay. So do people feel confident that they can talk to their GP about their mental health? And
if we get an appointment, definitely.
It is difficult to access GPs sometimes, but I do believe that they are all there, still working hard. We have regular meetings with them, with our services, to talk to them a bit more about how to make referrals and who to refer. So we're doing our best to work with them.
Yeah, that's good.
Can the referrals be made via social prescribers?
Well, we have regular meetings for social prescribers. We can't accept referrals from the social prescribers, but we would welcome the social prescribers discussing with the GP about whether or not to discuss that patient at the virtual clinic that we have, and then the GP can consider making a referral. So that there's ways of getting into our service that may not be as straightforward as we would hope. So yeah, we work very closely with social prescribers. They're a really good service, and they take on a lot of complex issues for patients. But if the patient doesn't actually have a mental health issue, then they're more suitable for the social prescribers. But if they do have a mental health issue, then the GP can make a referral to us. And we've got social workers who work in primary care mental health services who can work with people doing care act assessments or helping them to link in with services about their social care needs, but the person does have to have a mental illness or mental health condition as well.
Okay, thank you. Tanya, Laura, do you have any questions?
No, I think that's fine now. I think I've got a good go for mental health.
Good.
Yeah. I think, to be honest, it's better to use all the services out there than try and get as much therapy as you can if you suffer your mental health, and then
Well, that's it. Yeah. Don't just struggle on.
It's all about early everybody, I think, to be honest. But it's like obviously finding the right therapy for you and that as well. So some therapies won't work for some people, and if you're finding it too hard, just say.
If people don't really know what's out there, then they find it difficult to to put into words what they need, don't they? And so we're glad to have those conversations with people about what they might benefit from, and see where we go, because it's hard when you've got you're struggling with stress and everything. You don't always understand what the problem might be. So
I think sometimes it's better to improve your mental health for the next generation.
Absolutely,
definitely,
and there's mind, and there's psychological wellbeing services, so people can get lots of information and advice, and do have a look at the How Are You Peterborough website as well, because that's a directory of everything that's out there to help people with their mental health. Even things like yoga and walking groups, they're all helpful to mental health. You don't have to have therapy. It's anything that makes you feel better and reduces your stress is a benefit to your mental health, isn't it?
Definitely.
Right, thank you. So we've got a couple of website informations on that. Can you please complete the feedback form? And
I'll get that done.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Jane. I guess feedback I can take back would be maybe use Teams next time, but I'll ask. I'm not sure if Family Voice have Teams, but took me a little bit of getting used to Zoom. But thank you for your time.
Thank you, everybody.
You're welcome.
Take care.
Bye.
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 Bye.